Hi, okay, this is now my last video on the series I've been making of how to deal with conflict and so on. Okay, so I think in my other videos I have somewhat been speaking from a diplomatic point of view. And I wouldn't like to completely break the tradition, but I asked a question about a few days ago about how we can make people respect us more. Okay, so I got the Ten of Swords. Here's the card. Okay, so what I noticed is this is this is a grim card, and but it has a lot of to tell us. It has a lot to say. When you look at the person face down in the ground with the 10 swords in his back, you can't but help to wonder or see that this is unnatural. I mean, this is not just one sword, it's 10 swords, I think, in the person's back, okay? So, this looks like ritual to me. It looks like um, somebody, everybody got a kick out of Joe or Bob. Excuse me, I'm just going to move to another location. Okay, so there was a bit of noise in the background. I just moved to a more quiet space. Anyways, so everybody got a kick out of Bob or Sam or Joe or whoever the case may be. But we have to ask ourselves, why do we allow people to do these things to us? Right? So, shouldn't we take a stance and say enough is enough? Get to some kind of philosophy in life, and I think the Temperance card would also be a good card here. Although I didn't get the Temperance card, but I can imagine the Temperance card, because you need to be careful what to tolerate and what not to tolerate, and when not. And you need to know yourself. Right. Okay. So, like I said, the picture is unnatural. In the sense, it's not illogical, it's just unnatural because 10 swords in your back, I can't imagine that's very nice. It seems like you're being the fool or the gesture or the rag doll. So maybe you should get to the point where you toughen up and you get a bit hard and so on. And you said, this is enough. So maybe you should make people understand from the very beginning that they do not that you don't allow them to take their frustrations out on you, because then it becomes a habit. And I'll be honest, you can't blame people if they do this to you, right? Because you have made them used to the fact that they can treat you this way. So actually, the blame is twofold. It goes both ways. So how do you get to the point that people respect you more? You don't allow people to treat you bad in the first place. And that doesn't mean you have to be cruel. like I say, the temperance card, keep the temperance card in mind. Every situation is different. Let people know that you've crossed a boundary, but don't be mean about it if it's not necessary. And don't keep quiet. And I know Libras and I think Cancerians like to keep quiet when people cross their boundaries, and or people with these influences in the houses or certain aspects, and that's not right. Because eventually you're going to explode, or something real bad's gonna happen, and all that cropped up and built up anger is going to end the friendship or the relationship, no matter, even if it's a business relationship, especially if you're in business. Um, you should be a shrewd businessman. You should be you shouldn't allow people you're doing business with to swindle you. Don't give them chances. I know somebody. I'm not going to get into the story, but you can't afford to be overly tolerant in business, because that's not the way business works, right? So if things are not going right in business with employees or other people or clients, maybe the customer isn't always right. I'm into Star Trek for probably most of my life, and I enjoy all the races, and especially the Ferengi are quite entertaining. And I think there is a rule. I don't think it's actually a rule they ever mentioned in Star Trek, but it's a list you can find on the internet. It says, I think something along the lines of, the customer is always wrong. And you'll experience this reality when you go shopping these days. As much as people appear to be comely and good service, you're gonna, the notion about caveat emptor, let the buyer beware, is still out there. You just don't know it. So don't let people step on you, but at the same time, we do this for people we love, right? We allow people that we love to stick one sword and then another sword and then another sword in our backs, and we take it because we love the person. So maybe you have to save your energy to work with the people you care about, rather than being a general fool for anybody to get a chunk out of you, right? So you can only shape one or two or three people at a time, and you can take their contumely, you can take their jabs, which can get quite vicious and so on, but you take it because you know deep down maybe that person is good inside, and you want to bring out the best in them. You do this especially if you're a parent. You take things, but at some point you have to say, well, am I going to survive another stab? And maybe this person needs to learn this isn't how life works. You can't just keep on stabbing somebody in the back with a sword until the person is face down in the mud and can't do anything. We shouldn't be spiteful. We shouldn't allow people to be spiteful with us. So maybe with strangers, how you conduct your life with strangers and familiar people. You take what comes your way with people that you care about, but you don't allow them to make a habit out of it and never learn anything. Because eventually that person, if you sit them down and they're reasonable, hopefully, and you talk to them and say, listen, this is enough, I can't take anymore. But you talk to the person, you don't just suddenly, it's your fault if you crop up these things people do to us. It's our fault if we crop these things up, and then that person might not even be aware of it, because you should actually feel flattered. We should actually feel flattered when people feel they can lash out at us, because right, this is somebody you know. So maybe you feel safe at venting at somebody. And especially if it is a one-time occurrence, or maybe it's happened twice, but you know this is not in the person's nature, give them a break. But 10 swords, that's completion, at least, or so, another beginning, and that's too much. Right? But it is as much our fault as it is their fault. Because if you're going to come across as somebody that people can step on, people are not going to have respect for you. So how do you make people respect you? Shape them. Be strict, but also be kind. Know when to take something and when not to take something. And I spoke about Star Trek. And I'd like to close with this comment. There was this one Next Generation episode. I don't know if I'm allowed to say this on YouTube, but Commander Riker was going to a Klingon ship. It was like an exchange program, and he relieved the Klingon captain. Now that's quite traumatic. And when he wanted to restore the captain slapped him with the backhand. And he came back to the Enterprise, and he said to Captain Picard, I've learned a lot. And Captain Picard said, apparently you didn't learn when to duck. And Commander Riker said, when not to duck. So there are chances there are times in life when we duck and we don't take what people throw our way, for many different reasons. And for the equal many reasons, there are times we take things from people and we don't duck and we take it. Right, so that's my thoughts on how to make people respect you. I hope it was useful. Let me know in the comments and questions below. Okay, cheers.